Please welcome Dr. Richard Munang. Over to you, Dr. Richard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica, for that introduction, and thanks to everyone who is listening in today, and the organizers of this amazing Next Leaders Africa Summit, which I would rather call it the Now Leaders Africa Summit. What I would like to do is, and I will appreciate if everyone can listen through very carefully, because I'm coming after Salam, which has given the mega trends of the continent. And I see a lot of questions that are popping up on what can be done for others. Please listen through very carefully. This is actually a very crucial moment, not just for this summit coming now, but for us to interrogate ourselves and actually understand where we've gotten it wrong and how we can right the wrongs to ensure that we move in the right direction. And you will hear throughout my discussion in the next 20 or 25 minutes or so, crowded with African proverbs because we have them in abundance. A bird that flies over the earth and lands on an anthill is still on the ground. This African proverb speaks of one thing. It speaks of ambition. When you talk of transforming Africa in a decade and raising 1 million young leaders who will create lasting change in Africa by 2030, it doesn't get any bigger than this. 20 years ago, on the streets of Washington, D.C. in America, is when we last saw 1 million people gather towards a shared cause. And that was the 1 million man march that is recorded as the largest civil rights demonstration in history. Your aspirations today stand shoulder to shoulder with such historically grand events that are landmarks on the route of emancipation of Africa and friends of Africa globally. And just as a man with too much ambition cannot sleep in peace, we cannot afford to rest easily until we are sure that no one goes to bed hungry, because we're speaking today, 257 million Africans are going to bed hungry. We cannot rest easily until there is a means of income for the 12 million youth that graduate into the labor market without jobs and get disenfranchised into joblessness. We cannot rest in peace until we are sure that our economies are no longer 20 times less productive. And we cannot rest at ease until we are sure that we are no longer the most vulnerable region of the entire globe to the changing climate. And this will be the indicators of transformational leadership that we espouse. It is with great anticipation for success towards transformational leadership that I speak before you today. And I speak like a farmer, because I grew up in a home where my parents were peasant farmers, and they are still today, who plants a seed in bare ground, but with confidence that the bare ground will be turned to green leafy and lush gardens in a few months. I speak like a teacher. Yes, I'm a trained teacher, and I understand that a teacher who toils in the classroom, but with joy and confidence that is shaping those who will change tomorrow for the better. And of course, I speak like prophets will do, but I'm not one, but confident and without contradiction, because I want to speak today with honesty, because honesty is the only way we can ensure that transformational values-based leadership can happen in the African continent. Anything less than that will be good and sweet music to our ears. From the end of February, as we're speaking today, Africa, like the rest of the entire globe, has been under the attack of the COVID-19 pandemic. Beyond just being a health crisis, this has become an economic emergency, threatening to sink Africa further into vulnerability. As we speak, the region's GDP will shrink by 5.1%, and up to 50% of all jobs in the continent are being wiped out. And as we read of trillions, the rate of trillions of emergency stimulus being issued by other countries across the world to buffer their respective economies and ensure that the citizens can actually be resilient to these health crises we are facing today. It is also fair for us to also understand, and this is also a reminder that most of the critical lessons, as we've seen under the COVID-19, is that if your fundamentals are not right, you will never get it right. And that you must be able to bail out yourself in times of crisis. And if you only wait for others to do it for you, you might never get it right. It therefore means Africa cannot afford to externalize solutions to her challenges anymore. Because when the going gets tough, everyone retreats to take care of their own. That is a fact. I can't lie to you. I'm not a man of flowery speech or eloquence will change this fact. We must face it head on. And this is the main reason why this gathering today is not only important, but is fundamental and calls for transformational leadership that we must all espouse. But the question we must answer today is, what kind of leadership do we need? And who is responsible for that leadership? Because most of the time we discuss as if someone else is responsible to lead. I will start by quoting scriptures, where in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 1, verse 9, we are reminded that what has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. And there is nothing new under the sun. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, a keen look at history gives us the answer. In the early 1950s and 1960s, as the clamor for self-determined rule reached fever pitch, there arose self-appointed men and women, people who espouse values of boldness, of unshakability, of unity, of dedication, values of selflessness and fidelity to a struggle to liberate their people. What was then their vision and what I call today an unborrowed vision, a calling they had to execute. Their every move was governed by a laser-sharp focus and clarity of purpose, clarity of vision to win independence for their people. No amount of persecution, no amount of lack or threats would stand in their way. They did it not for themselves, but for their countries and continent, from the western part of Africa to the eastern part of Africa, from the central part of Africa to the southern part of Africa and to the northern part of Africa. They were joined ideologically in the struggle by timeless values of selflessness, timeless values of kindness, and timeless values and character of humility. Not materialism, not selfishness, not jealousy, and not the greed that we are engulfed in today. It is this group of people who ultimately took the honor of being called our founding fathers, and whose memory and legacy remain indelible in the chronicles of leadership today, whether we like it or not. What they did was selflessly standing for Africa's cause, using what they had. They never complained that there was no money. They never complained that they were never supported. They did not postpone this call for a day in the hope of elusive perfection. This is the foundation of values-based leadership that we must all identify with and champion wherever we are. No more excuses, no more blame game, no more theatrics, and no more complaining, because complaining is not a strategy, and blaming others. Today, 60 years later, we are called to take this lesson a notch higher, and it all starts with you and me. It starts with you and me, and to all the over 1.2 billion citizens, including you and me, in the continent, looking at ourselves in the mirror and reflecting deeply and answering these three fundamental questions. The first question: what do I have to offer in solving the known challenges of Africa today? Not someone else, you. And the second question: what can I do with what is accessible to me to make lives of fellow citizens better? And the last question: are you willing to take steps down this solutions pathway? Just as our founding fathers, answering these questions hold the key to discovering your own unborrowed vision, what you can do. Your purposeful pursuit, because the purpose of life is to be useful. Your usefulness in turning Africa's challenges into opportunity that will catapult you to become a transformational leader that is fit for purpose. And I use the word fit for purpose intentionally. From post-independent Africa to date, we have deviated from these values that won our independence in the first place. Leadership. And I really urge you people to listen very carefully, please. Leadership has increasingly become a term used in the context of assuming positions of power and authority. It has consistently been used not only in leading, but assuming positions of power and authority, be it in government, be it in organizations and many other forums. Even in WhatsApp groups today, people use the opportunity to say they are mean groups to dictate. It is a term synonymous with privilege. Leadership is used today to mean privilege, the privilege to self-indulgence. That is wrong. The privilege of self-seeking. That is wrong. The privilege of self-serving. That is wrong. The privilege of self-actualization. That is wrong. The privilege of self-preservation. And that is wrong. But had this been the spirit of our founding fathers, I guarantee you today we would not be where we are today, and we will still be under colonialism. Though they drop the ball soon after independence, we have an obligation to learn from their successes and also from their failure. We have an obligation to learn from their successes. Firstly, that leadership is about selflessness. Get that today, please. Leadership is about selflessness to touch many lives with what you have. Not only your life and not only your family life, but the lives of citizens, regardless of tribe and regardless of country. That leadership is about clarity of vision, of intended progress. That leadership is about taking personal responsibility, not feeling entitled. And that leadership is not about positions or titles. And more importantly, that leadership is about your passion to touch other people's lives, not only yourself and your family. A clear understanding of personal responsibility to the continent's well-being and progress is what we all need to become transformational leaders. And for this, I will leave you with 5 points for you to ponder on, because the responsibility starts with you and me first, not someone else. And the first point is put within an African proverb: rain beats a leopard's skin but does not watch at its spots. This African proverb is a reminder that fundamentals do not change. Fundamentals are non-negotiable. If you tell a hungry child that you gave him or her food yesterday, that means nothing to that hungry child today. In scripture, when the children of Israel were led out of slavery into the promised land, this was a transition from deprivation to abundance. While we may not all agree with Moses' leadership style, what we cannot miss is the fact that he led his people towards economic prosperity. This has been the foundation of leadership since time immemorial. Today, what we must ask ourselves is, with the changing climate and the adversity in which Africa finds itself today, whether we're talking poverty, we're talking disease, we're talking youth unemployment, how do we use what we have, firstly, as individuals, to unlock economic opportunities out of these challenges we face? If you cannot be able to look at how you can turn challenges to opportunity to better people's lives, that's not values-based leadership. We live in an area of competitiveness, global competitiveness, market economies, and this means that the sustainability of anything you do, whether it is a project you are running, the sustainability of the initiative you undertake, no matter where you undertake it, is dependent upon how successfully it can be executed as an enterprise. To you, this means that any cause you are passionate about, it doesn't really matter whatever thing you are doing, but doing something that you are passionate about must be one that touches others' lives, and one that can be implemented in an enterprising way. And what I mean by this is very simple. Prioritize solutions through what you can do, and especially look at Africa continent with abundance. It has sectors that hold unique competitive advantages. can enable everyone to solve problems. You must not have a position to be a solution provider. Ladies and gentlemen, in Africa, clear global abundance is in clean energy. If you look outside where you are seated today, you will see, if you are in the continent of Africa, 365 days of sunshine, coupled with very high post-harvest losses that we're seeing in the continent, food import worth $35 billion US, place us primarily to top no less, especially when we combine post-harvest losses that are worth $48 billion US to top no less than 83 billion each year when you juxtapose the 35 billion that is importing unemployment and exporting employment. Simple solar dryers that youth across the continent today, inspired through the spirit of innovative volunteerism, are showcasing the solutions to the problems that we so much talk about are with us. But we externalize them always because we do not believe in what we do. Lack of self-belief is a problem that have abdicated values-based leadership to be leadership that is synonymous to privilege that have not actually worked for the past 60 years. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, anything you do should be about to touch lives. What we must always understand, what it will take for each and every one of us to be able to do things that touch lives, building on already existing enabling policies that are in every country, is to come down from our mental high horses that tell us that having a certificate entitles you to a job, and to realize that the certificate actually bequeaths you to take responsibility to solve problems. That takes me to my second point. And this African proverb puts it in perspective. You have little power over what is not yours. The first thing you must answer yourself honestly is to determine what you really have. And what you really have is yourself. In the context of our discussion today, by yourself, I mean your skills. It doesn't matter how tall you are, how short you are, how big or small, which country you come from. What distinguishes you when you stand on that stage anywhere in the world is what you can offer, and I call it value. If you cannot bring value to the table, you will not be accepted in that table. You will never be told this. It's what you can offer that matters. It's not your tribe. It's not your country. It is what you can offer. We are all joined today by people from different countries and from different creeds. What brought us together here is to talk about solutions to the challenges we face with leadership. But what is more important is the value we came all together today to offer. So your skill is your biggest premium. And if you don't leverage on your skill, then definitely you cannot drive values-based leadership. And that takes me to my third point. If you pick up one end of the stick, you will also pick up the other. This African proverb reminds us that we must take our time to understand issues in their entirety. Context matters, and I have said this always. And therefore, we must never ever subscribe or ascribe to narratives or dimensions presented to us without questioning, interrogating, and critiquing them. There is profound power in a narrative. And if you do not have your own narrative, I can tell you, for free, you will not make in-depth progress in anything you do. Africa's narrative is not determined based on context, and it's not even determined by you. That's reality. Without critiquing narratives and synthesizing them better to suit context, you cannot make progress. And I say so, and I will take an area in which I have been working on for 11 years. I take climate change. And I say so because while Africa stands as the most vulnerable region to climate change, which simply means that the continent can actually turn the challenges of climate change to opportunities. The discussion from an opportunity perspective is not as high as from the vulnerability perspective. Yes, the droughts, the floods are a testament to the fact that climate change is with us today. But we must live with it and turn the challenge into an opportunity. But what has been a failure of narrative is that we've lost from the failure of this narrative to actually start discussing how climate action can be an investment opportunity. The climate action narrative is always choreographed elsewhere. And this is like a corporation, right? Which makes critical investment decisions without input of the majority of the stakeholders. It doesn't work. As a region, we voluntarily ascribe to such narratives without interrogating and coming up with befitting counter narratives. We do not do that. A very typical example of climate change, which I have been in the area for 11 years, and I speak without any fear of contradiction because that's my area of expertise. A very typical example, narrative, as far as climate action in Africa is concerned, is that it is presented as a social issue. It is presented as an issue that if there is no money, nothing can be done. No money, if money no day, we no do no nothing. Because money no day, if they not do for we, it means say we no do no nothing. But that's not right. The truth is, we have never as a continent explored in details and deeply and expanded on a narrative that in fact climate change is with us. It is manifesting in drought and flood, plunging people into suffering. But however, climate action can be leveraged as an enterprise and an investment opportunity for the continent. Why do I say so? Because climate action provides solutions that can actually be able to build socio-economic opportunities. That narrative is important. Today, as we know, if you look at the continent of Africa today, the challenge of deforestation driven by charcoal burning, traditionally the approach is prescribed, that is usually prescribed is tree planting. Yes, that's fine, we must plant trees. But on top of planting trees, we must be able to engage young people to start turning challenges into opportunities. If you take waste recovery, provide the most accessible, non-capital intensive, especially for young people, to turn waste into briquettes, to turn agricultural waste into biofertilizer. That will create them opportunities, especially when you take waste recovery to energy. Just in turning waste to briquettes, you're actually going to tap into a 20 billion charcoal industry in the continent today. The policies and enabling are there. And that's what, through the spirit of innovative volunteerism, young people across the continent are demonstrating that it can be done. Profound power in a narrative. And that takes me to my fourth point. And listen very carefully, please. We must leverage on our soft power. One profound African proverb reminds us that a cutting word is worse than a bowstring. A cut may heal, but a cut of the tongue does not. In the context of our discussion today, this proverb underscores the importance of what I call soft power, which is mostly expressed in the content of words, our words especially. And I will just give you one simple example to illustrate this. With the advent of social media, many youth across the continent are influencing their peers through what they share on social media, whether it is Facebook, whether it is Instagram, whether it is Twitter, whether it is LinkedIn, and you name them. From their sharing, from their taste in fashion, to their taste in music, and to their taste in lifestyles that they share on these social media platforms, these youth are influencing each other's choices through social media on a global scale, whether you like it or not. This is a manifestation of soft power that you have in your hands. You sit there waiting for power elsewhere. The power is in your hand. In the not so distant past, let me just give another example. In the not so distant past, about 2 years ago, an international media house, and I will not name it here for diplomatic reasons, slander an African country, and the youth and other social media users launched a famous hashtag, and I will not mention it here, that trended for days, causing the media house to withdraw and apologize for their out of character representation of the said country. This is soft power. This is soft power that you have in your hands. My message to you today is simple. Instead of wasting your soft power in influencing or creating things that do not add value. Time has come that you influence each other to become solution providers to start turning Africa's challenges to opportunities. Time has come for you to catalyze alliances of solutions where we all influence each other to take action against hunger and put poverty on a run and prosperity into the cockpit of progress. Time has come for you to become an innovative volunteerism actor. Time has come for you to become values-based leaders, not always complaining and blaming others, but to start showing that selflessness and humility is the best leadership values that you can be able to espouse. And that takes me to my last point. He who runs after good fortune runs away from peace. As you set yourselves to become value-based leaders, starting today, not tomorrow, values-based leaders, not leadership that is associated with privilege or complaining. As you set yourself to become leaders that are actually solution providers, never look at material gain, but rather look at the lives you will touch. Because if you succeed alone, you are failed. Success is about lifting people from the bottom of the pyramid. Success is about inspiring people so they can usher themselves to action. But when you focus on material, that's where selfishness, that's where greed has actually strangulated Africa's growth today. Material will be a consequence when you solve problems. Material is not an end. Therefore, you must focus on perfecting solutions to make it the most affordable and competitive. And in doing so, ensure to be selfless and work with the willing. Always remember that not everybody will embrace what you do, especially when you are doing what is right. Learn to live with it. Don't fear that someone will steal your idea. Just as no two zebras share the same pattern of stripe, no two people share the same fingerprint, even from the same household. Then no one can replicate your passion, because it is passion that implements, not positions. Passion implements. Positions do not implement. It is passion. And passion is your new currency of now. And originality in implementing an idea should be what you should focus on. But always strive to be selfless. And know that all of us will live knowing that when our time for judgment will come, we will be asked one question: what did you do with what you had? And what you had is you. This is the essence of values-based leadership. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Munang. I'm provoked. I don't know whether everyone has been challenged the way I'm being challenged. Right now, I'm finding myself asking myself, have I really done enough for my continent?
Thank you very much, Florence, and Thank you very much, Florence, and thanks, Francis, and thanks to all of you who organized this amazing, interesting discussion today. It is not just timely, but it is a discussion that is quite very, very intriguing, because you're talking about awakening youth consciousness, and to awaken anyone's consciousness, it should be awakened for a reason, and the reason you put is plastic pollution. So what I'm going to do, especially in these 20 to 25 minutes or so, and I urge all our listeners from across the entire continent and across the world, please, to really follow through the discussion, because most of the time when I discuss, people come by asking the same questions which have already been answered. So I urge and seek your indulgence to listen very carefully as we go through this conversation this afternoon. Thanks again to all of you. It is a great pleasure for me, actually, as I've said, to be here with you people, and what you're going to listen and see in this discussion is I'll use African proverbs to contextualize my points and to put in perspective what we need to do. And I would like to start with an unflattering African proverb, which is quite very, very instrumental in contextualizing the serious discussion before us today. And this proverb goes thus: no matter how beautiful and well-crafted a coffin looks, it will not make anyone wish for death. Whenever I think of plastic pollution across the entire African continent, this proverb comes to mind. While plastics form some of the most attractive, robust, and cheap daily use necessities, like packaging material, they cast a long shadow of doom. They spell doom for our own health. They spell doom to our economies. And they spell doom to the very environment in which we live in. As if that is not enough, when you put this within the economic perspective, across the entire African continent, the cause of plastic pollution to the marine sector alone is up to $92 million in revenue lost each and every year as we speak. The cause of pollution, including plastics, in the African continent exceeds $400 billion each and every year. This is much higher than the cost of solving the problems of malnutrition that we face in the entire continent and the problems of sanitation in the African continent. On the health dimension, plastic pollution is responsible for one death in every 30 seconds in poorer countries, and most of those poor countries are in the African continent. Plastic material used to prepare, process, package, and store food material can contain over 4,000 chemical substances, including the dangerous carcinogens. As we're speaking today, it is no news to anyone who lives in this continent that cancer is Africa's new health burden. When you look at the environmental dimension, in addition to the health and economic aspects that I've already mentioned, plastic waste causes between 1 to 5% declines in benefits to human derived from oceans. And this is estimated to be up to about $33,000 per ton in reduced environmental value. The situation is no different across most African countries. And if you take Ghana as an example, Ghana loses up to about 1.6% of its GDP, estimated at $290 million each and every year, all due to the compounding effects of plastic waste. This includes 19,000 in premature deaths every year attributed to plastic pollution. I don't know about you, but those of you who are listening across the continent and beyond, I don't know about you, but what I know is that plastics are a clear death trap to Africa's socio-economic, to Africa's environmental and human health. A fatal and existential threat. It is an existential threat to the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals. Even more shocking is the fact that we have over 46% of African countries that have actually put in place plastic ban. That is good news, and that is excellent, and this government should be applauded. Making Africa the continent with the highest percentage of national plastic bans globally. This is good news, and that is a report card. But despite this legislative success, Africa remains the second most polluted continent on the entire planet. Between the 1990s and the year 2017, up to 285 billion worth of plastic was imported into the continent of Africa. This contradiction sums up Africa's archie hills of talk without action. We talk too much and we don't act. The crime of passing the buck of implementation responsibility where it matters is visible in us. And in this, we are all guilty. Me and you are guilty. All the citizens of the continent are guilty because we, the citizens, often fold our arms, ride our high horses, pointing fingers and blaming governments for the failures, when we do not, first of all, blame ourselves for not taking action. We expect government to legislate. We expect government to formulate policy. We expect government to implement and monitor while we sit and watch from a distance. No, it doesn't work that way. The news I have for you guys and for all of us today is that it doesn't work that way. If you wait thinking that government will legislate, will formulate policy, will implement and monitor as you sit on a high horse and watch from a distance, grass will grow on your feet. Once there is an enabling environment, the role of government is to create an enabling environment. And once there is that enabling environment that is put in place, it is you and me, non-state actors, to exercise our creativity, to leverage on our talents, to leverage on our skills, and to formulate practical enterprise solutions that breathe life to such provisions. It is up to us as citizens to decide and take implementation as personal responsibilities. Let me repeat that again. It is up to us, regardless of what we do, and regardless of how old we are, to take implementation as personal responsibilities. And only then will we be able to reap the benefits of the extensive legislative bans that we see across the entire African continent today. And this is my message for you guys today. No matter where you are listening from, the message is simple: rise up. Rise up, and together, let us undertake implementation actions that unlock the benefits of multiple sustainable development goals. And as you do so, I have two words that should be your marching orders. And these two words are substitutes and alternatives. With substitutes, what happens is you convert plastic waste into valuable goods that can fetch a premium. And these productive items then take the place of waste in the environment. And when it comes to alternatives, you must come up with competitive replacements for plastics. And by this cut of plastic, so they don't get into the landfills in the first place. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, just as scriptures admonishes us that there is nothing new under the sun, there exists already model examples of youth just like you and me, who are selflessly applying themselves to already turn this challenge that we face and talk about in the continent into opportunities. But they are doing it differently. They are leveraging on what they have themselves, their skills and talents, in the process of what is called innovative volunteerism. That they retool their skills to be fit for purpose, to solve a problem, to address environmental issues, but in the course of doing so, become enterprising in nature. And they are doing so leveraging on what they have, their skills, their talents, their creativity, their energy, and enabling a non-restrictive regulatory environment that we already have in this continent. You know, we're in a continent that complains a lot. We say we don't have policy when we have policies. We say, no, it's always about someone doing it for us. Today, that must end. The example of young people, for example, in Cameroon, a young man who is having a degree in sociology took upon himself to recycle plastic waste into paving tiles. Inspired by innovative volunteerism, he ushered himself to retool his skills, and he leveraged the widely and freely available knowledge on the internet to train himself on making these tiles using easily available rudimentary material. He produced manuals for this, and today he is training other youths to join him in the solution process. These plastics pavements that he is making are 30% cheaper than cement blocks. They do not break, reducing breakage losses associated with cement blocks. They also do not fade like conventional cement blocks. And in addition to all these advantages, they take care of the environment by relieving it from choking plastics. And through this, SDG 1 is addressed on reducing poverty by creating income opportunities out of waste, because waste is a resource. And these young people are showing that. It also touches on SDG 3 on health and SDG 13 on climate action by reducing the amount of plastics that pollute, and SDG 6 on sanitation by providing an affordable means by which we can achieve clean sanitary living, and SDG 14 and 15 by reducing the amount of plastic waste that ends up choking our oceans and land. And he does this by leveraging on inclusive partnerships, engaging with people, because alone you cannot do it. That's the spirit of innovative volunteerism. And in Nigeria, a young lady inspired by innovative volunteerism is leveraging on the opportunities that plastic pollution represents in the most innovative way. She is leveraging on agro-waste and converting it to breakable, to biodegradable, take away plates, take away cutleries and cups, and much more. And these plates are not only cheaper, but they also provide an alternative to plastics. And through this, just like her counterpart, she's addressing a minimum of about 4 SDGs. SDG 1, SDG 13 on climate change, 14 and 15, life underwater, life on earth. These are realities, and the list goes on. You have Deladem in Ghana, you have Simon in Nigeria, you have Steffi in Kenya. The list goes on. The point is simple. The opportunities are endless. The opportunities are endless, and so much more when we premise plastics and waste in general in the broader context of waste recovery to world. Here, for example, if we are to recover agricultural waste, for example, to fuel briquettes or to biofertilizers and use biodegradable packaging, we will be creating multiple income opportunities in diverse areas: plastic waste recovery, clean energy, and food security, and simultaneously unlock the Sustainable Development Goals. This is the kind of integrated thinking and integrated approaches that we need to leverage to move away from talking about problems to turning problems to solutions and moving away from complaining and blaming others. That is the way, and that's what we must have in our mind. And I will leave you with 5 takeaways that you should ponder on, and please listen through very carefully. The first one is that fundamentals do not change. Whether you complain, nothing will change. Whether you talk about plastics pollution, whether you talk about any kind of pollution, you talk about climate change, you're talking about that particular issue, whether it is plastic pollution or it is climate change that is reversing the gains that we made in the past decades, it means nothing to a mother in the village. It means nothing to a mother in the village. Anything you discuss, you must always have that in your mind, that if I'm discussing a problem, the solution should be to change the life of a mother in a village or a child somewhere who is not having an opportunity to benefit. Because we live in a competitive world, what is called market economies. Global competitiveness and market economies are real. The implication of these is that the sustainability of anything you do will be dependent on how you execute it as an enterprise. And why I'm driving down this road is that it means your intervention to address plastic pollution must align with unlocking income opportunities while touching the lives of others. And for this, the approach is to integrate plastics within the broader waste recovery to world paradigm that I've already mentioned. Now we must use a multi-dimensional approach that will ensure plastics can ride on the market potential of other more lucrative areas. Let me give a very practical, simple example. Converting agricultural waste to fuel briquettes is a $20 billion a year industry that replaces charcoal use while preserving forests. Deladem is doing this. Simon is doing this with their team through leveraging on innovative volunteerism. Mensa in Togo is doing this. Isaac is doing this in Uganda, and the list goes on. DRC, Zimbabwe, they are doing this. And I'm bringing this up, and I want you guys to listen very carefully. If we devise biodegradable packaging to replace plastic packaging for these briquettes, it will mean that our efforts to address plastic waste ride on the market advantages of a much more lucrative area of waste recovery to energy. And this is what you must have in mind, that your efforts must make economic sense by providing solutions to areas that most need it and most relevant to communities. In this case, practical example I am giving here, this is reality, this is not theatrics. And this is not poetry I'm talking here. I'm not a politician. I talk policy and action. In this case, while a household or eatery may not pay attention to you talking to them about plastics, they will automatically take up an attractive, affordable, biodegradable packaging that is used to package what interests them, the fuel briquettes. What am I trying to say? I started by saying fundamentals are the same. A mother in a village wants a solution. She wants not to depend on firewood so that she can be able to have briquettes that can cook her food faster without necessarily having to pollute herself. And if they're cheaper alternative to charcoal, she will go for briquettes. But she will listen because you are bringing a solution, not telling her about plastics. And she will buy it because you package it with a biodegradable. Within this broader dimension, and the beauty is there are favorable policies in every country. What it will take is for you and me to calm down from our high mental horses that tells us that having a certificate or having a PhD, I had a PhD 11 years ago, but that means nothing unless that PhD touches a life. It is just as good as it can get. We must calm down from our mental high horses that tells us that having a certificate bequeaths us to be entitled. That is wrong. It bequeaths us to have the responsibility to solve problems. That takes me to my second point. We always say in this continent, no, we don't have anything, I don't have anything to start with. What you can only have what you have because you have little power over what is not yours. You can't control what is not yours. That's a reality. The first thing you must always ask yourself anytime is to determine what you really have. And what you have is yourself. It is your skill, but you must improve that skill because that is your only value. I've heard a lot of people say we are not invited to the table. If you're invited to the table and you come empty-handed, what value are you going to bring to the table? The next time they will not invite you. You don't even need to be invited to the table. You need to create your own table and get a chair that is even folded so you can carry the table and your chair anywhere. The opportunities are enormous. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I mentioned of a sociology graduate and other young people across the continent who trained himself leveraging the free knowledge on the internet and established an enterprise of making pavement tiles from plastic waste. He leveraged on the spirit of innovative volunteerism and collectivism because alone you cannot do it. I know a lot of young people say, oh, can I do it? Can I do it? Yes, you can do it, but you will not be successful if you work alone, because the essence of innovative volunteerism is to banish selfishness, is to banish that attitude that it is me, me. You will need to forge selfless collaborations with others of like-mindedness. And intending is to find a space to drive this integrated waste recovery solution where plastic waste can find a space in building opportunities. That you can create your own enterprise. You don't need to wait for anybody to do so. We are here to guide you. That takes me to my third point. I have said this over and over, and I'll keep saying this anytime I have an opportunity to have a conversation. Context is everything. If you do not understand context, you lose it. You will not be able to provide viable solutions. Context is everything. We must take time to understand issues in their entirety. And I say this, and I have been saying it, and I will keep repeating it. Africa's context is uniquely African. What do I mean? What works elsewhere does not necessarily mean that it will work. Even in the context of Africa, what works in West Africa doesn't necessarily mean that it will work in East Africa, or in Southern Africa, or in Northern Africa, or in Central Africa. These are facts. Then what about a narrative about a continent that we just embrace without questioning it? And the narrative or dimensions presented sometimes are presented without being critiqued. We don't critique them. Critiquing is not that you are against anything. Context is very, very important. Let me take climate change, where I have been in this area for 11 years. That's my specialty. And I can talk here with unending authority because that's my area of work. For the past 11 years, I've been in this area. Climate change is already impacting this continent. Facts. Africa is warming faster than most of the regions in the entire globe. Facts. Africa is the most vulnerable continent to climate change. Facts. But the question we must ask is, how can we turn climate change from a challenge to an opportunity? Because the fact that the continent is the most vulnerable continent to climate change also provides an opportunity. Simply means that we stand to gain the most if we leverage climate action solutions as an opportunity. And then we drive that narrative to inspire young people to leverage on those challenges as opportunities. That is not the case. The case is climate change is there. Yes, it is there. No, it is going to, if you don't have money, you cannot do anything. Of course, then we need money, but money alone is not the only answer. We need you to retool their skills so that they can develop passion and start creating their own climate action enterprises. We get these narratives choreographed thousands of kilometers away, and we voluntarily ascribe to such narratives without interrogating and coming up with more befitting counter-narratives. And I've used this example of climate change. Climate change action in Africa is presented as a social issue. It is presented as an issue that if there is no money, if money no day, we'll not go do no nothing. And that is the narrative that we pick up. Oh, money no day, now we'll not go do no nothing. But we have never explored and expanded on the narratives that in fact climate change is with us. It is causing havoc, manifesting itself in forms of droughts and floods and inflicting pain on citizens. But how can we be able to leverage climate action as an enterprise and as an investment opportunity for Africa? That is the way to go. And let me take, and I've said this so many times, I take deforestation. It's a challenge for the continent and the world because of charcoal burning. Traditionally, we are prescribed to plant trees. That's important. We should plant trees. But we have not interrogated, in addition to planting trees, what can we do to inspire and engage young people to get into other alternatives to take off the pressure from planting trees? If you look on the flip side, the broader waste recovery paradigm provides the most accessible, non-capital intensive for every young person in the continent to be able to engage in production of briquettes. Because we know this, over 80% of households in sub-Saharan Africa rely on wood-based biomass energy, firewood, and charcoal for cooking. Facts. We know this. And we also know that up to 67% of forest degradation is attributed to firewood and charcoal harvesting. And this means that the waste recovery to energy sets us on a track to recoup the over 20 billion charcoal industry in the continent that can then be able to create opportunities for youth, from the briquette making to fabricating clean cook stoves and trading in them are opportunities that are just enormous. But we don't talk about this. Only talk about money, no, they no go do no nothing. That narrative and context must change. And you guys must, from today, discuss climate change as an investment opportunity. Anything less than that means that we are not on the same page. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we must not blindly follow narratives, but rather interrogate and contextualize them to unlock more opportunities for us. And your skills should align to tap such climate action enterprise opportunities and then become an innovative volunteerism actor. Innovative volunteerism is for you, not for me. It's for you to retool your skill and become a solution provider to the challenges we face as a global community and as the African continent and your own country. That's your responsibility. That takes me to the fourth point on finance. The finance question always comes up. Yes, for legitimate reasons. As an African proverb reminds us, money is sharper than the sword. This speaks of the importance of financial capital. But one key question that is hardly answered, and again, it goes back to context. We don't ask this question. We don't want money. Now money come, make money come. And I've always said this. If you are given $1 trillion US today, as young people, without the skills, how will you bring impact to scale? Money is part of a means. It is not an end. On top of money, you need to have a skill. You need to have built alliances, inclusive partnerships, and develop interest and passion around an area that when you were to have a means to accelerate it, you are ready. Money up front without ideas kill ideas and bring fights. Distinguished colleagues, on this aspect of finance, as I've said, the importance of financial capital cannot be underestimated, but the question we must ask is, do we need finance at scale or impact at scale? And my answer to that is Africa needs impact at scale. And for this, finance cannot be approached in the same traditional sense that has been done for the past years, but it must be approached from an innovative thinking perspective, from an innovative financing perspective, building on already existing structures that are known in this continent. I am talking of the already well-established structures of low-risk financing that we call communal cooperatives. This exists in nearly every village in the continent. What needs to happen is for each and every one of you to come together and join hands together and pull together and join a cooperative and raise little capital and start your own climate action enterprises. It is through this cooperative that you also build relationships with actors who may end up even being your client. And this is how we can bring impact to scale. And that's how we can encourage collectivism with little resources, bringing higher impact, not the individualistic tendency. And that takes me to my last point. And I've spoken on this in so many occasions, and I will speak on it again today. People fold their arms and say that we want power. Which power do you want? You already have power. The power is in your hands. It's what I call soft power. We need to leverage our soft power to reboot Africa's narrative of now, because Africa's fierce urgency of now is to reboot that narrative. You cannot be able to do it because it has not been validated. To reboot that narrative that if you don't have anything, you cannot do anything, whereas at the same time, you have yourself. And this narrative, leveraging on soft power, and the soft power you have very easily displayed, even using this medium we're discussing here today, taste in fashion, or it is different, whether it is Afrobeat, etc., and lifestyles, they share on social media. It means that you already have the power, the soft power you are using to change the narrative on things that suit you. But we're not using it to change the narrative and the story of Africa. We're not using it to communicate successes of others because we like to pull others down. These are examples of soft power. You influencing each other's choices through social media on a global scale. And this is a manifestation of soft power. In the not so distant past, I have said this, you would have leveraged on the internet, and especially Twitter, to change not just how things can be done and even cause media houses to pull down certain words that they have talked about certain countries. This is soft power. So my message is quite very simple today. Don't waste your soft power. Use your soft power to engage your peers, to make them see that there are opportunities in turning waste to wealth. That waste is a resource. It is actually a resource. To catalyze groups of alliances, use it to catalyze that group of alliances beyond your country, because you should never ever make the mistake to limit yourself only to where you come from. I am from Cameroon, but I do not only limit my thinking to Cameroon. I am an African. I do not only limit my thinking to Africa. Become a global citizen wherever you are and understand how the world works. And you have it in your hand, and leverage your soft power to brand yourself as a solution provider. And always remember that he who runs after good fortune runs away from peace. As you set forth to become a climate action solution provider, to beat this war against plastic pollution and ensure that we can build a resilient continent, never look at material gain, but rather look at the lives that you touch, especially in the communities, and inspire people to see themselves as part of the solution rather than make them ask the question, am I useful? Because everyone is useful. Everybody have got something to offer, but they need inspiration. They need to be told you can do it. Yes, you can do it. They need to be challenged to do things in a good way to solve problems. And always know that material will become a natural consequence of your competitive solutions. But material can never be put as an end. Focus on perfecting your solution to make it the most affordable and competitive, but with intent to touch lives. And in doing so, please, this word selflessness should become your middle name, and work with the willing. Not everybody will embrace your ideas. Don't fear that somebody will steal your idea, but know that not everybody will embrace your idea. Nobody can steal your idea, because it is passion that implements. I keep saying this. It's passion that implements, not positions. I always know, as we are reminded in scriptures, in the parable of the talents, that those who fail to selflessly use their talents to bring good will be punished, while those who apply themselves selflessly will be rewarded with more. Choose wisely and get rewarded. We also reminded again that to those that much has been given, much will be expected. Today's generation, you and me, with access to knowledge and information, make things much easier. It means that we have been given much, and much will be expected from us. Decide, therefore, to use the expansive knowledge and work selflessly with your peers, and ensure that the battle against plastics can unlock and build a climate resilient Africa. Thank you.